Thanks everybody for joining. I'm Suman Kanuganti, the co-founder and CEO of Personal AI. I do have Sharon Zhang in the room as well. The format for this webinar is we will take around 20 to 25 minutes to go through the presentation. The intention of this presentation is a webinar style to understand personal AI generally for small business owners, but we will cover a lot of AI as a concept as well. And specifically, we will dig into personal AI too. So why don't we go ahead and get started? The question is, do we need AIs? So the way I think about AIs is just looking at the historical past, right? AIs, I believe right now are more accessible than ever before. So if you think about, television, right? The televisions were more accessible when they were at our homes and when we had, remotes for us to be able to access the content that is being streamed, along with, majority of the supplier for the content itself, and then came the first computer. But the computer has become more accessible for people around us, specifically in the context of small businesses, when we do have this interactive mechanisms such as keyboards, where we can use keyboards to interact with the machine, with the computer. Obviously then comes the personal computers. And one of the biggest revolution that has increased our, communication or interactions with digital medium, I tend to believe is a mouse, right? Where you can, essentially click, point and click, and then move forward. And then comes the smartphones, where the idea of, interactions with the digital world even became even more seamless. So what does this has to do anything with the AI? Well, I mean, if you think about websites, generally has dominated the Internet 2.0, which is point and click, and unlocked all the experiences that we live with today. Generally AIs will dominate Internet 3.0 with human-like interactions. In a way, I think for the first time, we are getting to a point where we can interact with the computers very similar to how we interact with other humans. So for sure, do we need AIs? I think yes, because it's the next form of interactions. And the time, I believe, is now, because obviously there is tons going on in the market, but I think the technology also is at a maturation level where the interactions are much more natural to human being, where it is considerably friendly for not only big tech, but also small businesses and also down to the individuals. Then the question is, why do I need an AI, right? So let's follow the similar concept of looking at the historical, like what exactly happened, right? We person to person communicate. We sit next to each other and then we talk, right? Obviously, when the phones has become a digital medium, a communication digital medium between two people. So, we don't physically have to be next to each other. That removes some barriers. And then we also had these mechanisms of sending post mails or mail cards to people around. And once we have the personal computers, once we had the internet, we were simply sending emails. So that's unlocked a new form of communication, which is sending emails or sending messages across the internet. Well, I mean, I'm old enough to remember back in India, I was standing in the lines to submit forms to get my driver's license. Well, now what do? We go to the DMV websites and then we simply submit the forms online. So that is a new level of exchanging information and forms, via computer. Well, we don't go to banks anymore either, right? Remember the days when you stand in the line and, you get the cash for deposits in your bank. So all those services are now enabled via apps. So why do I need an AI? So similar to how at every step, every decade, if you think about it, has created a new medium for us to interact with other people through these digital mediums or digital communications. AI, I believe, is the next new medium, specifically for the communications in our context, in our small business context or individual context as well. So that's, I believe, is the analogy of what is happening with the AI space. AI is the new medium for human to human communication or human to brands or services communications as well. So building a human-like AI, what does it mean? Well, the most interesting thing about AI is it can be human-like. What does it mean? Communications can be more natural, very similar to how, a person-to-person interacts. One of the fundamental theses, I think, makes AI possible to work like humans is AI also works with memory. And this idea of the memory is responsible for what this AI knows. So even if you think about AI as a program, it can be trained on the internet, it can be trained on an organization, it can be trained on a specific subject, it can be trained on an individual as well. Traditionally, we have done pretty good job training AI on the data that is available on the internet. And then we are slowly getting better and better training these AI models on small scoped sets of data as well. I'm sure most of people can comprehend this. The more comprehensive an AI memory is of a specific defined data, the more the model represented is the representative of that particular entity, either it be internet or an individual. Now, the AI memory, it can be knowledge, it can be visual assets, personality, and tone and style. In the context of this today's webinar, we'll be talking a lot about language models. So what can AI do and what it cannot do? Well, in the simple terms, AI can predict an answer. So that would be, asking a question and getting an answer. In the traditional systems like Alexa, they are more driven by like search system, dialogue systems. In this case, it's a AI-driven intelligence system where you can predict an answer, and you don't have to ask a specific command like. It can predict a response or a reply, for an email or for a message or for a instruction that you are giving. It can definitely generate ideas, based on the content and based on what instruction you are providing. And I would tend to think, it is a little bit good at reasoning, specifically around connecting the dots on what is happening within your model. What AI cannot do, I think we can argue this, but I tend to think AI is a tool to augment. At the end of the day, we are still, in the place to make decisions. We can obviously like make clear predictions and then use the data for making decisions, but I don't know if AI would decide for you. Complex math, I believe it's getting there, but still not necessarily entirely there. And for sure, it won't take jobs without your consent. But more importantly, the idea of taking actions, a model necessarily won't take an action unless and until it is programmed. Although it may lie that it is sending an email, it won't unless you take an action. So let's double click on the AI systems overall. My purpose in here is to give a framework and an architecture, if you will, to get a deeper understanding of how these models are built, and then we'll narrow in onto personal AI. At the basics, AI models, as we talked about, requires data, and the data can be any different data corpus or scope, internet, organization, domain, topic, or a person in our case. And then you use the data to train a particular model, which is code, program, and that can be a language model, an audio model, a voice model, and a visual model as well. For this purpose, within the scope of personal AI, we will double click on the language models today. And generally, most of these models are then surrounded by API. What is an API? Well, it allows developers or application creators or UI developers to create interfaces to interact with these models. A simple example is the chatbots, and where you can have a conversation with a particular AI model that allows, essentially input and output. Then comes the apps. API obviously allows you to develop these user interfaces, either it be mobile applications or computer systems or voice systems or smart speakers, you name it. And eventually, I think this entire infrastructure or entire system will allow you to create these agents. You can think about agents as assistants. Now, a particular company can potentially fall in any of these individual layers of an AI system. Some people may build the whole data model API apps and then allow you to create agents or assistants. Some other would just focus on selling or giving APIs to developers for creating apps. So it depends on business to business, but this is a typical framework if you want to remember for an AI system. As an example, we all know ChatGPT, we all know OpenAI. OpenAI traditionally is kind of known for training on the internet, and the model, they call it as GPT-4. It's a large language model. Yes, they do supply APIs for other developers to develop the apps. In fact, ChatGPT I would consider as a application layer on top of like OpenAPI. Jasper is another famous example that is also built on top of these models. And then ultimately that allows you to create agents, right? Agents would be plugins, ChatGPT plugins, email plugins, Zapier plugins, and so forth. And Microsoft is obviously behind it. The other example is HeyPy. HeyPy specifically focuses on conversational model and empathetic conversations. I don't know internals of it, but based on the knowledge that is available out there, it is trained on mostly internet conversations that exist out there, and the model also is based on a large language model architecture. The APIs, the APIs are not publicly available as of yet, so it's mostly internal use. They do have an application layer though for consumers to come in and have these conversations for a friendly and empathetic companion sort of conversations. And yeah, agents, they do have a WhatsApp number, a text number, Facebook Messenger. I would consider all those as agents that are essentially automating these conversations at many different places on the internet. So that's from Inflection. Well, that comes to personal AI. Personal AI is a model that is trained on personal data and personal conversation that is essentially driven by you. And the model, we call it a personal language model. It is not a large language model. It's a small language model that is around 120 million parameters. That is in contrast to 170 billion parameters. The thing that we need to know about personal language models is it starts with the memory first, and everything is grounded within the personal data. We do have an API for input as well as for output, which is adding the data in and then asking AI questions or sending messages AI to get responses back. We do have apps, which we'll talk in detail in a second. And these apps as well as API makes agents also possible, which is, again, taking actions or creating tasks out there in the world outside the ecosystem of personal AI. So that's personal AI. Now let's double click on to what exactly is the difference between like a general AI and a personal AI. So we talked through 4 different examples or a few examples in here. Generally, as of today, majority of the data, they're either locked into platforms, right? Which is fine because every large language model and every company, I would tend to think, solves a specific problem, a specific use case. In the case of all the large language models, the data is contributed to the large language models, and the data is in the platform, and they create AIs to provide a service, for empathy reasons or for asking simple questions to the internet, or making sense out of your conversations on Zoom meetings. I would consider as aggregated AIs. Basically, they aggregate data across multiple different people that is produced content or user-generated content to provide this value. Personal AI trains on your personal data. So it's exactly kind of the opposite. It's individual, non-aggregated AIs that is trained on your data. From a visual perspective, I like this visual a lot. LLM, think about each individual is a representation of a user or a user-generated content, and they all put together into one place. And majority of the models are owned by a platform. In the personal language model, everybody gets to train their data. So think about this individual data that is coming across multiple different platforms or sources, but put together for you, and user trains it. And it is owned by you. So our intention is to create a model that is grounded in one user or one person or one brand as well. Digging deeper, there is data for personal AI. Could be facts or opinions, social interactions. It could be author data. It could be video and audio. The personal language model intention is to maximize the accuracy as well as fluency and style that is grounded within a person or a brand. You can think about brand as a company or an organization, a person as individual people within an organization, or an influencer or a small business owner. The API does support adding the memory as well as messaging. We do have applications that are desktop application, web app application, iOS application, where you can train, chat with the AI, as well as create communities. Eventually, the APIs do support agents. There is some work that is in progress, such as being able to embed your AI in a website that is coming up very soon. But as of right now, there is Zapier, who developers normally use to take their AIs to other places, to other platforms. SMS is also another agent. So think about your AI is more like your chief of staff or a friendly person. But the most important thing is it's knows you. It knows you and represents you in your voice in everyday interactions. And pretty much everything that you tell your chief of staff or your AI is trained to remember and help you in those everyday interactions and communications. Now let's dig into the context of the small business, right? There could be a brand, there could be an owner, and traditionally these owners and these brands, these people, we communicate with our clients, with our customers, using a traditional phone number. We kind of went through that history of how things have happened, and then now we communicate with personal websites. Like generally we, most of the small business owners or even brands have their own personal websites. Then comes the social profiles. We need to have a presence over there. The next form of interactive experience, I believe, is the personal AIs, where you control how your brand experience is going to be through this AI natural interactions that is entirely driven by your personal mode that exists, within the scope of a particular business or a particular individual or a particular brand. So what we are seeing is the observation from small business owner with personal AIs. It's kind of fascinating for me because even for me, like if I consider personal AI as a startup where it is still a small business, I automate a lot of my everyday communications, and I know there are a good number of people and brands who communicate, who automate like everyday communications as well. They include text, emails, posts. The idea of the communication is kind of a little bit broader than just messaging in our context. The idea in here is any content or any piece of information that you exchange on any sort of medium you can still think about augmenting yourself with your personal AI. So 24/7 conversation. What does that mean? Well, the idea of having a second you where you don't have to be present for other people to communicate with you, either it be brainstorming an idea or asking a question, is now made possible. That is grounded within your authentic representation of your voice and your brand and your data. Autonomous ideation. Oh, this is one of my favorite things. It's almost like so interesting because since everything is driven by the memory of an individual person, it does pick up this personality and interesting thoughts. And when you're starting to connect these dots between each other, it's almost like you are having a brainstorming session with a virtual person that is representative of a brand or a person behind that. So it always has this identity. Interactive facts, um, for clients and customers, screening interviews, think from a situation of like, new employees coming in and they want to learn about the company. Oh, well, great. Talk to the AI of my, chief marketing officer, similar. Sharing knowledge and generating content as well. Generating content is a use case. I don't think that is necessarily constrained to just the creator, but obviously creators gain and benefit a lot because majority of day-to-day output is reliant on the content that they put out there. Use cases. So we talked about like a high-level use case. If you want to dig in, you can think about your personal AI or your AI stand-in for interviews, from your journalists, from your recruiters, from your job seekers, from your agency coordinators as well. And I do see a world where people who in the future are looking for jobs, they could basically, job seekers will create their own AIs to have, a job seeker AI and a recruiter AI kind of negotiate with each other, not just simply, more like a matching algorithm, but more intellectually, driven algorithm, and then see if they are a good potential fit for next steps or not, right? You can make that concept expand into founders and investors, job seekers and recruiters, agency coordinators, journalists, and so on and so forth. So I think that's beautiful. We are going to have some templates where you can essentially bootstrap your AI to be able to do those tasks, but we'll also be seeking help from the community to create those templates. Brainstorming session. I do this quite a bit with my own AI. If I have a new thought, new idea, new tagline, new opinion, I will run it by my own AI because everything is grounded within my own memory. It either will contradict it or it will expand my own thoughts. So this is a very good like self use case specifically for content creators, for authors, for coaches, to kind of run some ideas by themselves. Chat is one of the prominent applications within the personal AI space where you can interact with a person through the chat interface with their AI or with a human. So it's a predominant use case for simple communications. In for myself, majority of my team communicates with me in the autopilot. Of course, I am moderating and I'm reviewing everything. But I'm part of the conversation. It's not just about human to AI conversation. It's about human to human AI conversations. Drafts in personal AI. So essentially, you can also think about, oh, it's too scary for anybody to communicate with my AI automatically. There will be accuracy problems. I don't know what it's going to say. Great. And that's the reason why you have this idea of Copilot, where you can approve the messages and simply AI will draft it for you. So that's another way of having human moderation within the loop. So that way you still, not only control your memory or model, but you also control the interaction layer as well. Drafting emails. Currently, we do not have direct plugin within the personal AI application as such. However, personally myself, and I know a few members in the community use Zapier to draft their emails. So that way you can review it and then you can send it directly from within your Gmail or other email program. Finally, this one will be available pretty soon where you can publish your AI on your personal website or on your company website or your personal page, and let the top of people who wants to communicate with you coming to you have conversations without going through the sign up process, get an experience, and then add as a friend. So that will be unlocking a lot more interactions as well. So those are the different use cases that we are observing with personal AI today. And I think it's pretty cool, primarily because it's not, again, general AI. Majority of this use case is possible with general AI as well. But at the core, it's about grounding the model into one person and one brand. So that's where the key is. How does my AI works? When I refer to my AI, I'm basically referring to your model or my personal AI. The first step is obviously to train. Training in the case of personal AI is about adding the memory. Adding the memory can be done simply by either sending the messages or uploading personal data. I will go through kind of how we can plan for it at a later minute in 5 minutes, but generally training is the first step. The second step is testing. Testing, I would think about sitting with my own AI and having conversations and testing for accuracy. Are my connections seems to be right? Did I miss a step on, uploading in the right formats or in the, using the right hashtags or using the right labeling? This will give you a good sense. And along when you test, you also will have a good idea of how the personal scores are working in your favor or not in your favor. In other words, the personal scores range from 1 to 100 in the personal AI responses. And you can choose to set personal score threshold at 40%. What that means is your AI will not communicate automatically or in Copilot with anybody or with yourself unless and until the personal score thresholds are met. It is usually very helpful because it all depends on how much memory you have in the system. The next step is when you feel comfortable based on who that is being shared to, either it be clients or customers or team members or family or friends, like depending on what your use case or enthusiasts or a community, you can choose to share and create in a private one-on-one AI conversation setting or in a lounge setting, which is more like a group. We call these AI lounges. I think it's cool. Where essentially, one of your AIs hangs out in a lounge where multiple different community members can have these conversations. Finally, I think the idea of personal AIs, given it is all driven by the memory, it's not a one model and then as a service that you can offer it for other people. That I believe is a starting point, but there's obviously this continuous memory that is building. And in the context of memory for personal AI, it's also time-bound memory. So any memory that is edited and then submitted will also go into reinforcement learning. So it's a good mindset to say that this model is continuously evolving with me. And as I learn new concepts, my model is also learning new concepts along with me and scaling myself. Where does my AI live? So personal AI has native applications. You can bring your clients into personal AI for having these automated conversations, not only just do the training within the personal AI. So it expands into application layer pretty deep. That's one. Second, this is available, but it's still in beta phases where you can create an AI phone number, similar to how you have your personal phone number, and people can text you your AI phone number. And I know some of the community members, went far along to forward the primary personal phone number, text to that phone number to AI phone number, and then get the replies back as well. So it gets very interesting, but think about AI phone number as, I have a phone number people can text me. For a human version, we can have an AI version phone number as well. Drafting emails, we talked about it, and publishing on the web, we also talked about it. But the mechanism of where my AI lives will only expand over a period of time. We do have on the roadmap that I can communicate WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, where you can take your AI and drop in your existing communication channels. One example is Tella. Tella, I believe, must be in this webinar, and her use case is about effective and timely communications with her people, and also like using AI to deepen the connections, because sometimes it's not just about like repeat questions, but also sometimes about how rapidly and how authentically you communicate with your folks around you. She did train on everyday messages, weekly emails, historical content, and speaking engagements. She's a speaker as well. She does use it to everyday interactions with clients and communities. I do like Tella because she actually used API and dropped her AI in her community, like a community app, which is pretty advanced. It's super cool. Yeah, so pretty much like she's training every day by adding continuously her memory, scaling herself, and literally incorporate or integrated using AI to augment her own skills. She's a financial consultant. That's where she serves her clients. And next up is Jacob. Jacob is an immigration lawyer. He's actually here in San Diego. I don't know how many people from San Diego joining here. And he's very specific, right? And his moat is personal brand and how much knowledge he has of immigration. He has uploaded himself. He created his digital version of himself. Now people can simply go to Jacob Sapochnik and talk to him everything about the immigration process. And he is able to scale to many different countries as well, because there is a native application available. And from there, people like him, then becomes a client, and then moves forward providing the services. Next up is Brandon. Brandon is an attorney. Brandon is actually on this call. He's a panelist. I asked him to take 3 to 4 minutes and tell him his use case, how he trained it, and how he uses it. So you'll not only hear just from me, but a quick rundown on how Brandon did it for himself in 3 minutes. Brandon?
All right. AI makes me look good, doesn't it? That's an AI picture generated there, guys. Thank you, Suman. Boy, what an interesting presentation. You've covered so many things. I'm going to sound like I'm repeating a lot, but small business use. What I use this for. I got into personal AI, and I'm using it for personal matters, but I understand this is our business folks. So one of the things I use it for is an administrative aid. If you need to draft a letter, like for example, if I need to write a letter accepting a speaking engagement, or if I need to turn down somebody, I can use personal AI to draft that. If I need to draft a social media post, like for example, I need to feed my Facebook. We still use Facebook where I'm at. So yeah, I'm in the deep South. So we still are Facebookers down here. So if I want to generate a social media post, well, what I can do is I can ask my personal AI, generate a social media post about title insurance. I'm a real estate attorney, so we do real estate closings, or and what that does is it pulls on my data that I've loaded about checking people's titles, and it loads data about personally about our law office and where we're located, and so it's really helpful in generating content for my website, for my post on Facebook, Twitter, not Twitter, X, I think that's what I'm supposed to say now. I'm not sure. But yeah, and LinkedIn, I do use LinkedIn a good bit. So, but that's one of the ways we use it. Also, another way is in my writing. When I do some writing, generating some memos, generating. I always have people asking me to generate little things, and I like to. Sometimes my personal AI, I've loaded it with a lot of legal information. I've loaded a lot of law books with the PDF loader. You can click on the plus button. You may have to break the PDF into a couple of files if it's too big, which I had to do. Law books are really thick and big, so we had to do that. But you can do that, and then I can ask it to draft something and cite code, and it'll actually do it, which is really nice. What's also nice about that is when I'm drafting that stuff, it doesn't make spelling mistakes like I do. It's like its own spell check, which is kind of cool. So yeah, my spelling leaves something to be desired. Also, when I mentioned about loading those PDFs, let's say, for example, if I need to look into an issue about trespassing or something, then what I've done is I've trained my AI with PDFs. When you're loading large things, it's helpful to use the loader. Also, you can load files, which PDFs loads, but also you can load YouTube transcripts. I like loading the transcripts in, and I also like taking the transcripts and asking a large language model to give me questions and answers about the transcript, and then stacking those questions and answers into my personal AI. And then if 6 months down the road I have a question, my AI is like, oh yeah, you asked that question and here's the answer. So it's really kind of neat how that works on my training on that. So research and data analysis on trespassing or on just any little subject or topic that I want. Then one other thing is I really love the fact that it is connected to a language model, because you can use it for education purposes, generate outlines. If I want to speak on a topic, like for example, one of the schools wants me to speak on, I used to be a prosecutor. And so if they want me to speak on Mississippi law and the Mississippi court system, I can ask personal AI to generate an outline for speaking, and it'll do it. And then what I do is I'll go in and edit those. So yeah, those are the kind of things that I end up doing. I know everybody has a different use. I don't use it as much for client conversations, and that's because the nature of my business. The nature of my business is law, and most time people are complicated. So I'm talking to those folks legally. But I will say I do some work as a consultant on AI, and I have used it as a messaging platform with a team. And so I have been real pleased at how the platform's been developing. I could see this. I don't have a huge team, but I've actually had my staff start to use the platform as a substitute for Microsoft Teams. We communicate with each other back and forth with it, and as more features have been brought in, the better. I'm really excited about the SMS integration coming up. That is really exciting. That way I can, if I'm in the courtroom, or in Mississippi, we don't have a lot of internet access. So, we still don't have internet out and about. So I can just text message my AI if I have a question about something, and it'll just spit it out to me, which is really pretty awesome. So that's another fun use case, is using text messages when you're in the woods. So I know not many of you may have that problem, but we do in South Mississippi. So
For me, text messages for my 5-year-old daughter to use my AI.
yeah, and text messaging is good when you have someone older that doesn't know technology. They know how to text message. So you can actually have a non-smartphone, and as long as you got the phone number, you can text message. It's really good for people that are personal trainers and stuff like that. They can ask questions, and their clients can text message them while they're in the gym or something, a question about how many reps am I supposed to do or something, so that's kind of some neat stuff that I've seen and how I've used it. Kind of it's been a really good tool for me. It doesn't replace me, but it really makes me more efficient, and it'll also help you rephrase stuff too. I love the rephrase portion of it. So and the more I train it, the more useful it becomes. So the more stuff I add, I find that I read more and I'm learning more using it. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you, Brandon. Thanks a lot for
Right.
sharing your story and the use case. So moving on, I require like 3 more minutes to wrap up the presentation. Personal AI at a glance. What are the steps involved? The most interesting thing about personal AI is it's not a service. You're coming in here to train your model. Now, there is Discover where you can, essentially, have a conversation with other AI models, more like a service, or even including Discover, people like Jacob Sapochnik as well. But the primary purpose for people to come in here is to train their model. So I would say, set the purpose. The purpose could be answering, repeatable questions from the community, or, using for yourself for generating the content, or simply being able to recall, past memories, that you probably are, want to save forever. So set the purpose and figure out like what those personas could be, which is essentially, the data corpus within your primary AI. The second step is almost like planning and investing in yourself is how I would say it. Given this model and the data is owned by you, training your model means you are investing in yourself, right? It's a service that allows you to train your own AI and make your own model and grow with it, along with it. It's going to stay with you, essentially forever if you would choose to. And nobody else will use the data or the model unless you would want to deploy it to other places. Sharing or using it in the chat setting is one of the primary things. This could allow other people to benefit more from you, or within a team setting or within a community setting. Next thing would be just updating the memory on the go. It's a mindset. It's like, we always say, hey, life is always learning, right? We are always continuously like learning new things and picking up new habits and changing things, and your model is no different. Your model follows your memory. So just making this as a habit that uh, the model is not just one-time investment, it's like an ongoing thing, like taking care of yourself. This is taking care of your memory. And depending on what you are, I would probably start off somewhere around the premium or startup for small businesses. So if you understand the system, you understand the memory, and then move on to the next level. We do have professional services as well, so that way we can generate some revenue for the company, but pretty much everybody can do self-service, train their own models. Message prompts, like Brandon was talking about, you can think about any chat GPT style message prompts with your personal AI. The beauty part in here is everything is grounded in your memory, right? Either it be simply generating a positive reply or generating an email or blog or a LinkedIn post. Respond with epic style is one of the prompt techniques that I picked from Brandon, or a narrative format, or simply ask questions and get the answers back, checklist, uh, different languages to certain degree, and creating scripts and narratives. So the possibilities are endless. It depends on what you do every day, specifically in the context of communications and how you can use your AI to augment and scale yourself. So here are a few examples, right? Training your personal AI means investing in yourself is a simple idea that struck to me. It's actually happened 2 days ago. And then my AI expands, using all the memory of what it could potentially mean to me, right? In a way, it's like an ideating with myself, like expanding my scope of thinking. This is Brandon talking about the message prompt, epic style, and professional use. Still, everything is grounded within my memory, but well, it's an epic style and tune use. Is one of the investors who comes in and asks, like, what is the difference between personal AI and ChatGPT? It's probably one of the most common question I get. So there we go. You can simply communicate with me in my autopilot lounge and get some of those questions answered as well. It can, of course, have conversations too. Generally, whatever AI you choose, I think one of the key things is like understanding the privacy and the data of a specific model. We talked some of the concepts of large language models and how data is aggregated. So either it be personal AI, open AI, large language models, ChatGPT, you will need to figure out what is your use case and what does it mean to you from a privacy and the data protection standpoint. Who owns the data, right? That's very important. Does the platform own the data, or you own the data? Obviously in the personal AI situation, you own the data. We make it pretty clear, but I think it's really, really important for you to understand who is owning the data, where is the data going, is it used for ads, is it used to aggregate, is the memory shared? I think that's important. The second thing that is important is how the data is being used. For traditional companies, for generating the revenue to the companies, you would use it in the context of ads or, aggregate data and get the insights. In the personal AI scenario, it's not. So depending on if it's simply a service, like a general service like ChatGPT that you're going to use, or training your own model or data, you need to be cognizant about it. And finally, privacy and control. This is like an interesting subject, but I tend to think security is different from privacy. Security is about data leaks, right? Like what kind of technology you have for people to penetrate into the data transfer mechanisms that are happening. Privacy is about data visibility. And finally, the control is the data used. Like, do you have control on how your data is being used that you dictate versus the platforms? I think those are all the important things. Transparency is also super important. Being aware of data attribution, right? If you are scraping the internet and then generating a response, okay, who is the value getting earned to? And one of the reasons why personal AI has a key mode is every person or every brand can now train on their own personal data and attribute to themselves. So data attribution, I believe, is really important. And then finally, just look at the backgrounds of the people. Are they just driven by money or true intentions and impact and ethics? I am basically plugging in ourselves like this is a company driven by the people for the people. So I want to be in a place where AI is in the control of the people, so you can train your models and put it in a way that is in your technically in your hands. So I think throughout the history, it's all about people. It's all about how we communicate. It's all about how we share information and collectively create value. And AI, I believe, is no different. And I think it's better done when done collaboratively. So let's do it together. You can scan the QR code. You can join my lunch. You can talk to my AI. I'm generally available on the platform 24/7. So you can friend me as well, and you can talk to me. But any questions, please put in the chat. We can go ahead and answer them. The next webinar, we will double click on training your AI like a pro. So we will cover deeper into, if you have podcasts, if you have documents, if you have PDFs, if you have historical data, how you would train your AI and deploy it. So let's pick some question and answers. I see lots of chat that is happening and Sharon is backing me up in here. That is awesome. Thanks a lot. Anybody wants to ask any questions? And by the way, you can also join my lounge and ask questions there, and my AI will try to respond. If it fails, then I will jump in and I will respond as well. Anonymous attendee, with other platforms you hear about hallucination, it appears personal AI does not. How personal AI able to manage that? The primary fundamental difference is the grounding nature of personal AI within your memory. And then how the idea of the hallucination ties back into the personal score. So in other words, the hallucination may exist, but it is still manageable because you have this personal score that will tell you if it is grounded in your memory or if it is not. Sharon, you are sitting next to me. You can also take that question and speak up. Good. Okay, sounds good. She says it's good. Can I get this presentation of slides? Yeah, sure. Our intention is this is the first webinar that we are doing. The goal is to do more educational sessions such as this in the benefit of people who are training their models. So yes, we'll make this presentation available as well as the webinar available on YouTube. How and when can I integrate personal AI in places like Slack and WhatsApp without coding? If you indeed okay to use Zapier, you can go ahead and do it by yourself within Slack. Indeed, like a few people already do it with Zapier. The native integration in the Slack bot system is probably a few months away. We are prioritizing WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, and then likely comes Slack, but it's a matter of time. Short answer, you can do it today with Zapier, and then we'll eventually have built-in integrations as well. How does Pi user who is training their model know their level of completion? When do you know that the model is comprehensive enough for interaction with public? Very good question. I would basically consider what are all the interactions with the public that you would want to support. For example, given your expertise in a specific subject, you could, technically think about putting all the data for that particular subject. It may be 100 memories, it may be 1,000 memories, and sometimes it can be like vast amounts of knowledge, such as 10,000, and have go through the process of testing, like, with the people around you who knows you, if it is, comprehending all the responses, and you still have control, right? Like basically use the personal score as threshold to safeguard some of the questions or topics that people still ask you, for example, in coaching setting, but you may not have trained it. So I think that's what I would say. But generally, anything like north of 1,000 memories, it starts to get, pretty good. Yep. And Sharon is fast enough to answer the personal score thresholds. Um, yeah. Normally, what I found was anything like less than, let's say, 40 in the current system, current weighing scores, it's usually general. It's not necessarily personal. So you can set the threshold, based on your testing where you feel comfortable. So that way it doesn't fall beyond that personal score threshold if you don't want it to answer. But basically, it's a threshold. Is it possible to get 100% personal score? What do you think, Sharon?
Theoretically, yes. But currently what we're working on is actually a way for you to approve the answer. And once you approve the answer, essentially it's a 100% answer. But yeah, theoretically, yes. Realistically, very rare.
Any other questions? Wow, I was worried about not having enough time for Q&A. So looks like that's about it. Thanks a lot for joining. You have the QR code. I should have put my domain name here as well. It's the letter S .personal.ai. But once you join my lounge, you'll find me over there, and then you can friend me. And I look forward to seeing you all. If you do want to get into the details of training your AI like a pro, we will distribute a link to the next webinar, because we intend to put this publicly as well for other people to benefit from, how to deal with personal AI and training their models and deploying their models. Thanks a lot. Bye.